Diba Ilunga is the powertrain president at automotive supplier company Magna, and on the show today, we are going to ask him all about the split between software and hardware engineering and what that means. We'll talk about digital twinning and how it can improve vehicle performance and efficiency. Plus, we'll find out whether Magna is ever actually going to build its own vehicle. So make sure you stick around for all that and a lot more right here on GreenCars, the podcast. Welcome to GreenCars, the podcast where we cover everything from hybrids and plug-ins to EVs, alternative fuels, advanced technologies, and much more. I am automotive journalist Craig Cole, and I'm joined by none other than Sam Abuelsamid. He's the vice president of market research at Telemetry, and of course, he is my co-host. And we'll get to our interview with Diba here in just a minute. But first, Sam, I got to ask you, how was Operation Frodo EV?
It actually went surprisingly well. Nobody got stranded. Nobody ran out of energy along the way. We made it to all of our designated charging stops, and it went good. And the dogs seemed to enjoy it. They liked having a nice quiet ride. So it was a success.
Gotcha. So basically, what you're doing is you're rescuing they're beagles, right? And you're taking them from like medical testing and everything, and finding them loving homes.
Yeah, they're coming from all kinds of places, from puppy mills and medical testing, and just strays that have been abandoned, and we're relocating them to from a place where there's too many of them to a place where people want more of them. So
that's
going
fantastic
from the Midwest out to the Pacific Northwest.
Gotcha. That's a lot of good work, and you guys do that a couple times a year now, right?
Yeah, we're doing it twice a year, and occasionally, a smaller, if there's one or two dogs that need to move, we'll get one or two people and get one car and do it as well. So we have, over the last 4.5 years, we have transported 104 dogs.
Wow. That's fantastic. Yeah. Amazing work. Good job.
Thank you.
But
we try.
You're not just trying; you're succeeding.
There's a lot of bad stuff happening out in the world, and there's for most of us, there's not a lot we can do about it. But if you can find even something small, do what you can to make the world a little bit better place, and eventually it all adds up.
Mm-hmm. Well, you're doing a good job. It's good to hear. But our special guest today, as I mentioned earlier, Diba Ilunga from Magna. He's their head powertrain guy, and it's going to be a good discussion, I know. But I really want to ask him about what he thinks the next big innovations in powertrain technology are. I want to hear if they're going back to external combustion and steam power, if that's going to make vehicles more efficient or something like that. You never know what engineers are developing. But Sam, what about you? What do you want to learn from Diba?
I'd like to learn a little bit more about how they're utilizing software as part of the process. Basically almost everything in a vehicle is in some way controlled or enabled or defined by software. And so I'd like to learn more about how Magna is using software and also just in general, what other interesting areas they're working on, what's new, and what are they focusing on?
Yeah, we've got a lot. There's a lot going on in powertrain at Magna, and it will be a good discussion. But first, for help finding your next ride, visit greencars.com, where we have expert reviews, a helpful buyer's guide, there's an EV matchmaker, and much more. Again, that's greencars.com, your hub for sustainable motoring. So Magna is probably one of the most important automotive companies that most drivers have never heard of. Magna does a whole bunch of stuff, and they offer a vast range of powertrain products. And bringing us up to speed on all of this is Diba Ilunga, the powertrain president at Magna. And welcome to the show, Diba. We're so glad to have you today.
Thank you very much, Craig. Thank you very much, Sam. It's nice to meet you, and looking forward to talk with you.
Yes, absolutely, and likewise. So just give us an idea of some of the powertrain products that Magna offers, because it's a lot of stuff.
It is definitely a lot of stuff. And I think to summarize, we are coming from a tradition where we do gears. That's really where we are coming from. So we really come from two companies, one doing transfer cases, which is basically a kind of something that you put after the transmission that allows you to make out of a rear-wheel driven vehicle a four-wheel drive vehicle. And the other company that came into Magna Powertrain was the former Gate Track, which was doing dual clutch transmission. So really gear products that came together. So we are still doing the transfer case, still doing the transmission. And on top of that, now we went into the electrification, doing everything that you can imagine in the propulsion of electrification, starting with e-drive, so purely 3-in-1 system, going up to hybrid systems.
And I noticed I was before the interview here, I was perusing your LinkedIn page, and it looks like you've been at Magna for a couple decades. It's quite a long run there. What's kept you at the company for that long?
That's correct. I've been with the company now 21 years. It's the age of my son.
Wow.
And really, it's, first of all, I would say the entrepreneur spirit that we have in the company, where you get a lot of freedom once you have good ideas to execute them and see them coming true. So that's really probably the first thing. And the second one is just the team, having an extremely dynamic team and just moving forward and having fun every day at what we do. Right? So that's really what kept me here.
So with that entrepreneurial spirit, Magna produces so many components across the range for vehicles. And
yes.
You could almost build a vehicle entirely from Magna components. How much interaction is there between the various different groups within Magna to get get higher levels of integration, or to benefit, for one group, say ADAS, to work with powertrain, or other parts of the company to produce something better, create something new that's maybe more than the sum of the parts?
Yes, and that's really one of our strengths, is that we cooperate between our groups. We work quite a lot together. So depending, for sure, powertrain and seating, we don't have too much to do in common. But once you take, for example, electronics and powertrain, we work a lot together. We are now also working with Cosma or Structure Group, offering a new cradle for e-drive. So there's a lot of work that we do together. It allows us really to get a much better integration in the vehicle, really simplifying the job of the OEM, allowing them to have a better integrated system, better optimized at the vehicle level versus having something that just optimized the component.
So beyond just the gears that you started with, what are some of the other areas in terms of powertrain that Magna is involved in?
So there's a lot of, first of all, software, right? So we came from the gear product, which was a purely mechanical product. We had this huge transition at I would say, end of the years 2000, where end of the year 2000 and going forward, where we introduced a lot of software, which allowed us really to upgrade our products. And then we have the whole electrification, where you go into the high power electric switches, where you go into all the magnetic solutions for the e-motors. So that's really the transition that we went through, and the additional products, the additional areas where we get involved into.
Yeah, powertrains are really the most interesting part of any vehicle, I think, personally. You would probably agree with me, given your role
gives
at the
the emotion to the vehicle, so I would definitively agree with you.
Yeah, right. I was just curious, what percentage of Magna's business is powertrain versus other automotive-related things?
Yeah, so we do not report powertrain as a separate entity. We report power and vision, which represent, give or take, a little bit more than 30 billion in our sales, which is give or take 36% of it. And Magna Powertrain is definitely a substantial part of that. So powertrain is definitely bringing a lot of technology to the market, and an important portion of Magna, and for sure one of the groups where we see the future of Magna.
Mm-hmm.
And you mentioned the software. How much of the effort on the powertrain side today is dedicated to, or I don't know how you necessarily break this out, but maybe what percentage of the people working on powertrain related stuff is on the software side versus the hardware side, and And if you could talk about, are you starting to incorporate AI, as part of the software development process?
It's a very good question. So I would say, give or take, if we look in the engineering side, there's give or take 50% of the people who are working on the software. Maybe a little bit more, maybe a little bit less, but that's a good number. In terms of efforts and the cost of it, it also represents a pretty big investment upfront in the product, right? And then I forgot the last part of your question. The AI.
Are you starting to utilize AI coding tools as part of the development process?
There's really two steps in the AI introduction, right? So the first part, which is the one you mentioned, which is in the process of creating software, definitively yes. So it starts with all the requirement analysis. You can now do it using AI tools, and then the whole coding, making sure that you get the proper coding and then the testing. So there definitely a lot of AI involved. The next part, which is for me the exciting part, is once we will have AI embarked on the product. So we are working on, can we replace a certain number of components in our e-drives by AI? We are getting our first tests. It's getting exciting.
How's the testing going?
It's going well. It's going well. So it's really predicting. So some predictive models. So some sensors, you could replace them by AI technology. So these are the kind of stuff that we are looking at. I'm actually pushing my team because I would like to see more. I would like to see some predictive tools that tells me if the components is going to fail upfront. So we are working on all that. Some very exciting topics that we are discussing.
So another big part of software development in recent years is the shift towards digital twins and virtualizing everything. And of course, one of the things that Magna produces is electronic control units for various aspects of the vehicle. Are you starting to do virtualized testing of the compute platforms in the vehicle as well as part of your development process to, as they say, shift it left to test software on virtual versions of a new ECU before you have physical hardware to try?
So we do a lot of virtual testing. The ECU itself, we have not done a digital twin of it per se. But we have done digital twins of other components that we have in the inverter. And we are now working on having the whole drive system as a virtual twin. And that will then allow us to test the entire system. So yes, we are moving into that direction. It just depends a little bit on priorities, where we see the biggest optimization first. And that's why we have not started with the ECU itself, but with some other components that we have in the inverter.
And can you briefly explain what a virtual twin is and why that is
helpful? Yeah. Absolutely. So virtual twin is basically an image of your physical product in a digital way, which has most of the same characteristics. So you can mimic the behavior of it, and you can predict now, entering different parameters in terms of how you will produce it or how you will stress it, what would be the logical reaction of that component, right? That's the whole idea of this virtual testing and creating a digital twin so that you can see the impact once you submit it to certain stress, how it would react.
I see. So if you're making a drive axle or something, you can have the perfect digital twin. You can figure out what grade of steel you might need to meet the strength requirements or the design of the CV joints or something like that to fit a given application.
Absolutely. So that's a perfect example. The bending and the noise levels, it's exactly what we are virtually predicting. And then at this stage, we have an accuracy of give or take 99%. We are really good at predicting where we would land with the physical part. Yeah.
So recently we were talking with somebody else from an OEM whose her background is actually in vehicle structures, but now oversees a lot of the EV development. And we were talking about the structures, and it sounds like one of the challenges with especially as you get into electrification, you're taking away the noise of an engine that often masks a lot of the sounds that you have in the vehicle. So is that an area that you're focusing on as you develop the hardware components to refine those so that they make less noise and create an overall more refined experience for customers?
Absolutely. So in an EV, up to a certain speed, you basically have zero noise once you are in the cabin, right? So you want to make sure that the EV or the electrical components are not creating a noise that's disturbing. Some of those noises, as you have experienced, they are new to us, so they're kind of, oh, this is odd, I don't want to hear this. So yes, we are working a lot. There are different solutions that we are implementing. For sure, you want to have, I would say, a good product, good gears, good motor. But then what I learned here is that there is a lot of opportunities to also avoid the noise through software. That was one of my big discoveries in this journey of electrification, where we were doing some modulation of the amplitudes, so reversing or getting the negative noise created so that we can eliminate the noise. That was pretty exciting discovery that I made with my team as we were going through this journey of electrification.
Is that through the actual mechanical design, or using active noise control systems, or a combination of them?
It's active noise control systems, basically through software, 100% software, nothing on the hardware, which was pretty cool.
All right.
So with powertrains, what is it that Magna can do or offer that OEMs can't? So basically, if I'm a Ford, if I'm a Honda, why would I want to use Magna powertrain technology?
So I think the first thing that we see is that we see across all the OEMs, right? We work with most of the big OEMs, so we can really benchmark or help them to benchmark across the entire suites that's available on the market. We can also offer them some niche products, because often the OEMs want to focus on the higher volumes and want to outsource the lower volumes. So that also is something that we can do, and we can leverage or scale, offering that to several customers so that they can get it. I think also from a technology standpoint, most of the OEMs want to focus on the experience in the vehicle, right? And we can really come with the experience of the specific powertrain, what you really need to move the vehicle, to ensure the stability of the vehicle, so that you can really focus on the experience of the vehicle, focus on the driver, and we can focus on the rest, making sure that you get the vehicle that is a good one.
So you can deliver the power requirements, the NVH requirements, the safety. You handle that.
Absolutely. We handle all that at a good cost, because we have so many customers which are asking for the same at the end of the day. And that's really what we are offering to the market.
So following up on that, I know one of the, from talking to people in the benchmarking area in recent years, as they have looked at especially vehicles from China. One of the differences that they've noted from vehicles built in North America or Europe is in the way components are sourced. My background is in engineering and in automotive product development, so I know that oftentimes automakers will go to their suppliers and they'll start with something that is an off-the-shelf component, but then they will want to customize or tweak something for their particular needs. And what they're finding that companies in China are doing, they're saying, yeah, that's okay. It's close enough to our what we've specified. We'll just take the off-the-shelf one unchanged, and they get that at a lower cost, because if a Magna or other supplier has to customize a part for an OEM, that involves a lot of extra cost.
Absolutely.
Are you seeing any of that changing for your customers in North America and Europe?
Yes, absolutely. It's changing, and it's changing very fast, right? So I think there is definitively a huge cost pressure on the market, and all our customers in the US or in North America and in Europe feel that pressure, right? So yes, they are changing, going into that direction. I have received for the first time now a request from one of my customers telling me, tell me first what you have on the shelf, and then I'll give you just the physical parameters, how I want you to fit it in the vehicle, the rough specification, and you tell me what you have, give me your best cost, and then I'll see if it works for me. So that's the first time we got such a request from one of these OEMs, and definitively going towards what our Chinese customers are asking for us, which is typically off-the-shelf products with zero development cost, and they just fit it in the vehicle then. Now, one thing that we have been doing over the last, I would say, seven years is really working on our platform and really making sure that as we look at the product, we define certain blocks where we say, these ones we cannot change, right? And that really allows us not yet to be completely 100% off the shelf, but to be very close to that, where we say, this we don't change, because if you change that, then the cost of testing is just exploding. So we don't want to go into that direction.
So electric vehicles, obviously, they're really taking off in global markets, sort of inching along here in the U.S. I don't think they have been as popular as people had hoped, or at least initially expected. But in the U.S., at least, we don't see internal combustion going away anytime soon. But how much life does ICE have left in it? Is there more efficiency to be gained?
So more efficient to be gained, absolutely yes, right? So if you look at the ICE, we are still at the how do you say, conversion rate from the fuel into the energy or the rotation of the motor, which is not where it could be. There's always improvement possible. The question is always at what cost, and that will be, I would say, a balance that the OEMs need to make. Now, if you look at how many cycles are left, there are some people who say there are two life cycles left, so give or take 14 years. Some predict a little bit more, but it's something in that direction. It is for sure that the market is going towards electrification. That, I think, is a given. The question is always how long we have this transition. When you look at the transition, the most logical way to make this transition is to go through hybridization. That is, from a cost perspective, the most logical way, but every OEM chooses their own path. And we are here, as I mentioned at the beginning, with a wide range of products that can support basically whatever they choose to do.
Because it's quite remarkable over the last 20 years or so how many improvements have been made just to the humble gas engine. You've got direct injection they've added, variable valve timing and lift, and downsizing, turbocharging. They've done a lot to improve things.
Absolutely, yeah. And recently, I haven't seen, when I was in China recently, some further improvement that they do on the exhaust to recover the exhaust gases and make the vehicle. It basically transforms all the particle in the exhaust gas into solid particle, and basically they have an engine that's kind of clean. It just creates solid waste.
That is fascinating.
So is that something like a particulate filter like we see on diesel and some gas engines, or is that something else entirely?
It's more than that, because I think it mixes the exhaust gas with some reactive, and basically it solidifies everything that is not CO2. No, it solidifies even the CO2, binds it to some molecules. And you basically have no gas exhaust from the vehicle, which was pretty amazing.
That is incredible. What is this technology called? I've never heard of it.
I don't know. I've seen it on one stand, and I was pretty amazed. So I have a few guys following up. But since I'm not into combustion engines per se, I'm not doing the combustion itself. I didn't follow up myself.
So you mentioned hybrids a couple of minutes ago. There's a lot of different flavors of hybrids, from parallel power split hybrids like the Toyota and Ford systems to more of a series hybrid, similar to Honda's hybrids or the Nissan e-Power system, and through-the-road hybrids. Is there a particular variant that you have a preference for? Do you think is there any that are better than others?
I don't think that there's anything that's superior itself. It all depends on the choices you make, right? So you can go for the fuel economy, you can go for the power level. It really depends on the choice that the OEM and what is the experience that we want to give to the user. But there's really nothing where you can say it's absolutely better, because then we would all do the same, right? So there's not like one silver bullet that kills everything, but depending on what you want to achieve, there's options.
So in the powertrain realm, what are the biggest changes that you've seen over and I forget, was it 21 years you said?
21 years. 21 years in powertrain, absolutely. Yeah. So the first one was probably the switch to, as I said, right, to software. That was probably one of the big changes, and something we really took us a little bit by surprise. And then the second one is now what you see with the electrification, because we all thought it would happen very quickly. Now it's happening slower, but it requires a lot of new knowledge, and it's really a new dimension, right? Once you introduce magnetism, once you introduce high power, it's a completely new world that you're adding to the traditional gears noise that you're used to.
And to follow that up, what is the next big leap then? Is it hydrogen? Is it megawatt charging of EV batteries? What do you see as the next huge leap forward?
I think the biggest change that will probably come quickly now is the change in the batteries, right? Because that is, if you look at the EV or even a hybrid vehicle, it is a big source of cost. So all of my customers are working on getting cost out of the battery. And that is probably also a key that will open the door to the electrification much more than what it is now. So that's for me what I expect to come next. And then sky's the limit. I think we are always brilliant to find new stuff. So I'm looking forward to it.
One of the areas that's listed on Magna's website under powertrain systems is what you refer to as energy storage systems, which often today that's referring to large scale stationary batteries. But here we're talking about how you're storing the energy on the vehicle, fuel tanks, and other things. And a couple of things that are listed on here are CNG storage and hydrogen storage. Do you see much of a potential for either of those or other alternatives besides electrification that would help improve the efficiency and sustainability of vehicles going forward? Is there much of a market for CNG or hydrogen or anything else?
At this stage, so those would be particular applications for larger trucks, for longer distance and things like that. But we are eventually some other application. But no, at this stage, we don't see a large scale application of this. We see that there will be whatever 5% of the vehicles equipped with this, but not a large scale application.
So you guys obviously have enormous capabilities, from supplying hardware to even manufacturing vehicles. But Magna is not a household name. A customer might recognize their vehicle has a Bosch fuel injection system or Continental tires. Does that level of name recognition with consumers, does that matter to you guys?
To us as a company, no. So what we want is make sure that our customer, the OEMs, because we are business to business company, that our customers have the best product and that they can sell their vehicles, and that the experience that the end users make with that brand is a good experience, right? So if you think about it, we make 60% of all the transfer cases on the roads in North America. So 60% of all the vehicles which are four-wheel drive in North America are powered by one transfer case, which is done in Magna Powertrain, but nobody recognizes it. So no, we are not bothered by that. We want to make sure that our products are the best product, that our customers sell the vehicle, and then I think it's what we are looking for.
Yeah. Because your typical driver's not going, I'm going to go and I want the Magna transfer case on my next truck.
Correct.
Yeah.
Correct. Yeah.
So in the past, going back at least 15, 20 years, Magna talked about wanting to be in the business of designing and developing complete vehicles, and perhaps even not necessarily selling a vehicle under their own brand, but having a vehicle that they could hand off to an OEM that would brand it and sell it, but Magna would manufacture it. And of course Magna has Magna Steer that has manufactured complete vehicles for a wide range of customers, including the Mercedes G-Wagons, for the last 40 plus years, the BMW Z4, Z4, and the Toyota Supra. What does Magna still have an interest in potentially developing complete vehicles? Is that part of what you want to do?
So we do have the capability to develop a full vehicle. We are working with certain customers, especially when they want to do to localize a vehicle in a region, we can work with them, help them localize the vehicle, make sure that it is homologated in the region. We can for sure develop an entire vehicle if that is what is required. So capabilities are there. And as you mentioned yourself, we are also able to build, and we are still building complete vehicles for OEMs which are interested. It's there, but again, something that we are offering as a service to the OEMs who are interested, who need that capability from us, that we are not looking at selling a vehicle under our brand. That is not the essence of what Magna wants to do.
So we can't expect any Magna Marola or Magna M150 truck or something.
No.
That's too bad. Not. You've got all the parts, though.
We have all the parts. That is so true. You could have a pretty cool vehicle, but that's not the objective. No.
Yeah. So EVs in China are firing on all cylinders, so to speak. And what is Magna doing to keep up with all of the innovation that's coming out of China these days? Because that seems like it's really the place to be in the electric vehicle world.
It's definitely the place to be. So there's a few things that we're doing. The first thing we did is we set up a fully fledged engineering center in China. So we are now, since the last, I would say, 2-3 years, capable of developing in China for our Chinese customers, respecting their timing and their costs, which was a challenge at the beginning, but we are there. So that's one thing. And for sure, also, we are using that engineering center to offer service to the rest of the world. And then it's being there with our customers. We have received some good awards in the last 2-3 years with our local customers. And really learning from how they work. We do a lot of tear downs when we are in China so that we can understand where the technology is going. And we have a few partners with whom we are working on future technologies in China.
Are there any other major aspects of what Magna is doing in the powertrain field that we haven't talked about that you want to address?
That we haven't. So it's basically, I would say, innovation. There's a few, I would say, challenges that we have in the propulsion of the EVs that we are working on. So it would be going magnet-free, or at least heavy rare earth free in our motors. So it's mainly the innovation, right? So we haven't talked too much about that, but I think what we are really trying to do is answer to some real problems that we are facing. So in the case of magnets, it's the whole pollution that are created through the current production of magnets. So we are working on those solutions. We are continuously working on getting more efficient in our e-drive so that you can save on the battery. Those are I would say, the stuff that we are working on that we didn't really address here, but nothing that I want to mention in particular.
Yeah, I've had the opportunity to try out some of Magna's electrification technologies in recent years, like the e-axle systems on I think it was on a Gladiator, and some of the other components on various other vehicles, and it's interesting how these technologies are developing, and trying to get more sustainable for the full life cycle, not just the usage of the components, but everything from raw materials to end of life.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. I think I drove that. It was a Gladiator, you said, Sam, and it had the two e-axles. I think a drive event up in Brimley, Michigan, right?
Yep, absolutely.
You guys do the winter testing
there. Absolutely, and we had that vehicle and another one. Very exciting vehicles, and pretty amazing how they stick to the ground in those conditions, and also the whole power that they deliver. It's pretty amazing.
That was the coolest part, being able to just whip it around instantly. You have the immediate torque and lots of it, and you can just go out because it's a nicely groomed snow field, at least the part where we were at, and you could just go out there and have a blast with this exciting new powertrain that basically dropped in to the Jeep. It was...
And as we talked about earlier on the software side, being able to simulate the equivalent of a low range on a 4-wheel drive off-road vehicle with electric drive, how you're using software to manage those electric motors to get the same kind of effect for climbing steep grades and so on off-road.
Yeah, and that is one of the magic of electrification, right? So with software, you're really able to do a lot in terms of vehicle stability, in terms of power levels, etc. So it is pretty amazing. how much more control you have once you go into an electric vehicle through the software, and that is really going to be a game changer for the users also.
Well, fascinating discussion here, Diba. A lot of fun. I learned a lot. I hope Sam did too, but he already knows a lot.
Absolutely.
He knows a lot.
He knows a lot. But before we let you go, Diba, we've got to do our 3 for the Road segment. This is where we each answer a very quick question that's sort of designed to help drivers go green. And for you, I've got a 2-parter. So basically, what is your favorite powertrain technology that's currently available? And what powertrain technology are you most looking forward to?
So my favorite is really, I have an EV truck, so I love it.
Yeah.
I love the power level. I love the reaction time. And what I'm looking the most forward is a better range, right? So I have a pretty good range, but it takes forever to charge my battery. So I'm looking forward to faster charging and better range.
Yeah, definitely. Sam, what have you got? Favorite technology now and future?
I still have a soft spot in my heart for Wankel rotary engines.
Okay.
The power density of those things. I'll always love those things, but obviously they're not very efficient. They consume a lot of oil, they consume a lot of gas. So not necessarily an ideal engine for the 21st century. But going forward, still, with electrification, and I'm looking forward to more proliferation of various combinations like EREVs for certain applications, and pure BEVs for other applications where it makes sense. Having a spectrum of solutions that meet everybody's needs.
Very good answers. For me, one of my favorite powertrain technologies is perhaps a bit unexpected, the catalytic converter, simply because it's arguably like the greatest emissions control device ever, right? It's done more to clean up exhaust from vehicles than probably any other technology. So as an owner of a vintage car, I know how stinky the exhaust can be, and I can't imagine a time when everybody drove cars like that, because it does not smell great. And then the future technology, I think like the megawatt EV charging that they're doing with a lot of OEMs in China is absolutely fascinating. And that kind of ties into your point about range, Diba, because range becomes much less of an issue when you have a good infrastructure for charging and you can do it at a very high level.
Absolutely.
So.
Absolutely.
But fascinating discussion. Thank you both for your time. And Diba, again, we appreciate it very much.
My pleasure. Thank you very much for having me.
Sam, I've never met Diba before. I've been to a number of Magna events, but what a great guy.
Yeah, he's really interesting. He's obviously, he's been with the company a long time, and he's seen a lot of changes in the industry and within Magna. So he's got some good perspective on how powertrain technology in particular has evolved over the last 20 plus years. Yeah.
I mean, he's been there for 2 decades, more than 2 decades, and that's real staying power. Tells you a lot about the company when employees stick around that long. But I was kind of sad with their manufacturing expertise. They're not going to build a Magna branded vehicle. That sounds like might be a good thing, but apparently it's not in their wheelhouse or not something they want to pursue, but that's too bad.
It's been, Magna has actually been manufacturing complete vehicles since like the late 1970s, at least. Every Mercedes-Benz G-Wagon on the road, it was actually built by Magna at Magna Steyr in Austria. They also have made a wide range of vehicles for many manufacturers. Most recently including the latest gen Toyota Supra and BMW Z4. But I think that's actually a smart move for Magna, because this way they don't have to spend the money on the marketing and setting up a sales and distribution network and service network.
Like we learned in our Scout video podcast.
Just build the vehicles and sell them to the automakers that are putting their badges on them, and let them deal with all of that hard stuff. And oftentimes that stuff can be, it's not easy doing that. It's not easy designing and building a vehicle, but it's also not easy figuring out how to sell it to people, how to convince people to buy it. So yeah, I think Magna's probably got the right strategy.
And why would they also want to potentially step on their customers' toes, right?
Yeah, that's true. I mean, when you are selling something under your own brand, it becomes a little more challenging to get, Ford or Toyota or Honda or, General Motors to buy your parts if you're using them in your own vehicles. Unless, in Magna's case, I'm sure that they are fantastic parts. So, everybody would want them anyway.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, but what else did we learn beyond that? Obviously, electrification. That's a huge topic for Magna. I mean, it's a huge topic for every supplier company, right?
Yeah, and as with other companies, they're trying to figure out the best path forward. As you've got different rates of adoption in different regions, in China and Europe and here in North America, and so. They're figuring out. Okay, they're trying to figure out. How do we, stay at the leading edge of technology? With their China Tech Center, but at the same time, how can we also improve this stuff? How can we make it more efficient? So they're utilizing software extensively. More and more. I think he said, currently, it's roughly a 50-50 split between engineers working on hardware and engineers working on software. And for a company who their specialty is manufacturing stuff, actually making stuff, having half your engineers working on the software is, it's not a trivial matter.
Yeah, I mean, the software is arguably more important than the hardware these days with all the features that cars have.
Yeah, I mean, most of the hardware can't work without software.
Exactly. And then the other thing that was fascinating too is the fact that automakers are interested these days in using off-the-shelf components rather than having hardware that's been customized to their specifications.
Yeah, as I mentioned, in my history as an engineer, oftentimes automakers would want something. Oftentimes it was a bunch of small little tweaks, but it meant doing a not insignificant amount of re-engineering to achieve that. And often these are things that the end customer, never going to see. They're never going to be aware of. They don't care. No. And I've seen multiple teardowns of Chinese built vehicles, and one of the things they always talk about is here's 6 different cars from 6 different Chinese automakers. They all have the same wiper motor. Why does somebody need a custom wiper motor or any number of other parts? And it sounds like according to Diba, automakers in the West are starting to see the light on that.
Yeah, because there's potential for huge cost savings if you're a General Motors buying the same wiper motor as Honda and Kia, let's say, and the scale there should reduce the cost.
Yeah, no, absolutely. Takes a lot of work out of the process, and you just ship the same part to half a dozen different customers, and everybody's happy.
But if you're designing that part, you better make damn sure it works and never fails, because if you need to have a recall or something, then it gets ugly.
Yeah, I mean, there's obviously a risk to monocultures. If whether it's in agriculture or in mechanical systems, if you have the same part or the same plant or the same part, everywhere, if something goes wrong, then it affects everybody. So, there's a little bit higher level of care, I think, that's probably needed to do that successfully.
Yeah, but big trade-offs as well, big payoffs rather as well. Sam, great chatting with you. Always appreciate your expertise and insights. Thank you again.
It's always my pleasure to talk with you, Craig.
Yeah, and we'll see you on the next show, sir. Appreciate it. And with that, thank you all so much for watching GreenCars, the podcast, right here on YouTube. And the audio version of this show is available from all of your favorite podcast providers. But next up, check out our fascinating discussion with Kurt Kelty, who's in charge of a whole bunch of EV stuff at GM. It's a really great episode of the show. Watch that next. And of course, as always, make sure you keep it clean and go green.